All right. So good morning, everyone. My name, in case you don't know me, my name is Lisa Anzoldi, and I am the Vice President of ATDCFL, Vice President of Communications at our chapter. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today and making time out of your busy schedule. I think you're in for a real treat with this amazing webinar. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I do want to point out some really awesome things on our website. So I will share my screen for a second so you could see what's going on. Okay. So we do have our upcoming events page where we do have today's webinar and also the other digital encounters coming up. We do have a board meeting tonight, and that is open to the public as a reminder, so you are welcome to join that. Just need to register for that. We also have a webinar next month, Selling to the Seller, as well as our webinar in July, MacGyver Your Training. So if you have not registered for either of those, please feel free to do so. I think they're going to be amazing. Also would like to point out, in case you don't know about it, our wonderful blog. And I'm a little bit partial to the blog considering I write it every month. But this is a great way for you to get information on everything the chapter is doing and anything you need to know in the month. One thing to note in this past month's blog is that we do have a survey that went out to the members. We're asking for your voice in what you want to see available as digital encounters. So please, it's only a one-question survey. Let your voice be heard. Let us know what you would like so we can make this chapter work for you. The other thing I'd like to point out is our YouTube channel. And there we have Alex, our president, who hosts his weekly off-the-cuff episodes. And they're all on there. So if you missed any, you could feel free to watch them. They are very interesting. I do enjoy a good off-the-cuff episode. So that's what we have going on in the world of ATDCFL. Okay, so now before I introduce our guest speaker, I want to tell you a little bit about her. She is the co-founder of the Alpha Project Solutions. She's an executive coach and consultant with over 20 years experience doing so. And we're so honored to have her here today. And here is Patty Oji. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you, Lizanne. It's a pleasure to be here. Alex, thank you. And to all of our wonderful members today that's joining us, thank you again. This is one of my favorite topics to speak about. All things leadership and team development is my jam. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint with you all now as we get started.
Awesome. Just one thing to keep in mind before you begin, Patty, is that I just wanted to let everybody know there will be time for questions and answers. We're going to kind of intersperse it throughout. So you can use the chat window to drop us any questions you have throughout, or you can unmute your mic when Patty asks for input. And then at the very end, about 10 minutes before the end, I will be putting a survey in the chat window for you to fill out about your experience today. So without further ado, take it away, Patty.
All right, thank you again. So we're talking about a great topic today, and thank you for the introduction, Lizanne. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, as Lizanne said, I've been an independent consultant and business owner for many, many years. And in the time that I've been consulting, coaching, training, I've had a wonderful opportunity to work with a number of senior executive leaders and their teams across a variety of industries. And so people and project work is at the heart of what we do at Alpha and People Project Solutions, and it's my passion, it's my love. So anything that involves people work is really a pleasure for me to present. As you can see, some of what I do is partner for healthy high results. I think we really need to be mindful about the healthy part of high results, because if we do high results at the cost of our people and our health, then those results are not only not sustainable, but they're not ethical either. So I really work with leaders and their teams for a healthy, high performance. And I have some specialties around leadership, teaming, accountability, and definitely inclusion as a path, because we're all stronger when we're inclusive and together and leveraging our united strengths. So that's my come from place today, a little bit about myself. I want to invite you to make this more conversational. We've got a wonderful, cozy group, so I'm going to engage you in the process. Please lean into it, and let's have a wonderful discussion and learning experience today, because I recognize that you're all professionals with a wealth of experience and a lot to contribute. Let's make this interactive, and let's make sure that it's not a flat and boring lecture, because we don't do flat and boring around here. Our session objectives for today, going from teammate to manager. Alex, I want to thank you for picking this topic, because it is so very timely to talk about team relationships and workplace relationships. What we intend to do by the end of this session is to build a greater awareness of the challenges around moving into a new relationship context in the workplace, going from a peer to now a person of authority and higher responsibility. And then we want to talk a little bit about horizontal violence. This is a trend that I'm seeing that really emerged in the data and the research in the nursing and healthcare field. And I think it's so appropriate that we talk about that today, with so much happening with our healthcare workers, their immense stress levels. And it's something that started off being documented in healthcare, but that I do see in other industries, and that more attention is coming to be directed in that area for improving and to mitigate any type of horizontal violence or lateral violence. And we'll get more into it. Lastly, how do we redesign a relationship when a staff moves from teammate to manager? How do we negotiate that? How do we deal with all of the complexity that happens around that shift and that change? It's something that we all want. You know, teammates are aspiring, many of them, to be managers, to move up the career ladder. Much of the work that we do is around supporting growth and capacity building. And so we have to create the ground conditions for our teams, for our people to continue to thrive and make the impact that we're looking for in the world and in the business outcomes. And to do that, this is a highly important talent management topic. So with that, we're going to move on to the agenda. In order to achieve our objectives, there's a few things we're going to do. We're going to look at the context, and then we're going to look at strategies for successfully redesigning. Then finally, we're going to go into a piece for ourselves around action and accountability. So that's our roadmap. And the next part I want to talk about is really talking about all the systems that we're a part of. And before we jump into that all the way, I just want to open up the chat and ask you all, what's important about this topic, going from teammate to manager, from your perspective? Feel free to put that in the chat box. If you want to unmute and say something, please go ahead with that. But I've given you my perspective on what I've seen in the industry over a number of years. What's so important about this from your perspective? Go ahead and lean into the conversation, please. I want this to be engaging. All right, looks like we have some stuff coming up on the chat. Let me see here. I'm going to stop this for 1 second so I can look at the chat. Okay. All right. Yeah, developing new boundaries. Thank you, Adam. Absolutely, that's super important. Vanette says, see lots of people promoted up without the skills to manage. Absolutely. And people management skills are the core skills. They're the skills that facilitate all other business outcomes. We know it's about relationships, and we know it's about tasks. And we know that leadership really attends to both of those. And want to be able to maintain healthy friendships? Absolutely. There's relationships that have been established. Seeing more of the entire picture and understanding where you now fit. Absolutely important. Again, taking a look at systems is a key point to that. Thank you. Michelle says, the why, someone is pursuing a manager role, or the why someone is promoted. Individual success does not always lead to great managers. Absolutely. You bring up a point that we're going to discuss, Michelle. How do you scale success? As a leader, as a team manager, it's not about your individual success anymore. It's about collective success and driving success and responsibility for that. Thank you so much, everyone. That's absolutely it. This is a key topic. So now let's talk about the systems that we're in. And it's so important to take a bigger picture and recognize that we're all living in multiple systems. So there's organizational systems, and I really like the approach from
Patty, I think we have one more. I'm sorry, we have one more comment from Janet.
Okay,
Understanding,
please, go ahead.
yeah, understanding how this affects our work-personal relationship. Someone at work calls me girlfriend sometimes, in quotes. I don't
Yeah,
like that. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you for bringing that up. There's personal relationships. Again, there's boundaries. And then there's a lot of level setting that we need to be able to do. How do we be a relational team manager or team leader, stand in our authority, stand in our integrity, hold authority and responsibility, and do that in a relational way with there's healthy boundaries in place. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. So in the organization, we have organizational systems. One of the systems I like, one of the models I like to look at is the 6 systems of organizations that is noted in the Mastering Leadership book and widely noted. And we know there's communication, leadership as a central organizing system. There's delivery services. There's accountability as a system in and of itself, and a few others. Then let's talk about human relationship systems. We're all in relationship systems. And a system speaks to the interconnectedness of different points. So if we think about it and we think about a relationship system, it's any group of more than one person that is tied together, that's interconnected and or interdependent. So let's just think about all the relationship systems that we're actually a part of. And just go ahead and chat that, put that in the chat box. Like, so I'm part of a team leader of my organization. So I'm in an organizational relationship system, and we all have relationships within the company and the organization. I'm a mom. I share that. I'm in a family relationship system. I'm in a wife. So I'm in a partner relationship system. What are some of the other relationship systems that we're a part of? There's tons of them. Go ahead and throw it in the chat box. What are some other examples of relationship systems that you are a part of?
we have here client relationships as one of our responses.
Absolutely. That's right. There's an interconnection and interdependence there. Client to consultant or provider or whatever it might be. Partner, ally.
Peer, supervisor, supervisee, patient relationships.
Absolutely. Patient relationships, peers. You have your teams where maybe there's a hierarchy. We have alumni associations. We have community of faith. We have special, like maybe we're artists or we play some type of instruments, or we have some sort of affinity group that we're part of. Everything that we do in relationships. And there's no way for us to get around that. Was there anything else to add, Lisanne?
Anyone else have anything else to drop in the chat? Anything else to drop in the chat window?
Say it fast 10 times.
I know. Tripping on my words today.
Okay. Well, great.
All right. I think that's all we got for that.
Wonderful. So yeah, we're all parts of multiple relationship systems. And as you note here in this picture, those systems are nested. There are systems and groupings and clusters within larger clusters. So even if we think about organizations, you know, you have the organizational wide system, then you might have departments and units and divisions and then teams. And then even within the teams, you might have some maybe cliques, and you might have some subgroups or working committees that work better together, just people who tend to kind of gel together. And friendships, right? You have friendships as well. Then we have what I call stealth systems. These are the systems that are not always visible and obvious to us, but they're always operating in the background. One of those is organizational culture. We don't always talk about it. We talk about it in the work and in the writing of the work, but it's not something that you see, feel, and touch. It's something that happens through people's behavior, through the atmosphere that's created, through the values that are actually lived versus the written values. So it's a way of being that is accepted by those in the organization, and really it's reinforced from the top down, right? So there's cultural stealth systems. Sometimes you don't know the real culture of the organization until you're in there for some time. And there's different things that appear and emerge as you grow in responsibility and authority and in senior leadership. Another system that we're in is that we got to talk about our political institutional systems. There's all these systems that our country has been founded on that are also acting. There's rank, there's privilege, there's this political systems, there's socioeconomic systems, there's racial systems. So all of these are operating in the background, and they're sort of shaping and forming how we interact as human beings as well. And then finally, the nested system. So we talked about that. Everything is interconnected. There's complexity. There's systems within systems. And so there's huge dynamics happening in terms of systems and relationship systems. And it's really key for us to talk about these relationships, because that's really the environment that we're in when we're operating in any organization. Whether we like it or not, we are in relationship with our coworkers. Let's think about that. How much of our time do we spend there? I mean, look at just some of the data. By some estimates, we spend up to 1/3 of our life at work. And for some of us, we know that that's a really low estimate probably. We can spend so much time at work. For those of us that work from home or historically have worked from home, there's no clear boundaries. We can end up overworking quite a bit because the delineation between work and home is not as clear. Work is too accessible. 63% of employees feel isolated due to a hostile work environment. So that's a nod there to that horizontal violence or lateral violence or workplace abuse. And we'll talk more about that because it's so critical to keep an eye on that, to stop that, because it destroys everything that we aspire to do through our working relationships. There needs to be a zero tolerance for toxic environments. And horizontal violence, I'm seeing happen much more outside of the nursing field. It happens across industries. Okay, we'll talk more about that. 63% of respondents state that work stress negatively impacts their mental, physical health. We know that. We know that the body keeps score. We know that health has real physical implications. We know that it has mental and emotional implications. Great. So employee satisfaction can be increased by strengthening work relationships. Who do we spend as much time with as the people at work? I often have some respondents or participants in my work say, well, I spend more time at home with my family. Think about that. Do we really? With how many waking hours after we account for our sleep and travel time to and fro and busy time at stores and all of the time that we spend at work and sleep time, do we really spend more time with anyone else? Probably not. More than likely not. So let me go back just a bit. Here, I really want to be able to talk about our horizontal violence, but I think we have something that we need to discuss in the chat.
I just, when you brought up that chart, it just kind of brought up for me that the relationships that you have at work, aren't chosen. It's what is. And your relationships that you have at home or in your organizations that you're a part of personally, you're choosing to be part of that. And yet the place where you don't get the choice is the place you spend the most time. And sometimes you feel stuck, like you can't move from that job. So now you're stuck in that relationship. So that just kind of occurred for me when you brought that up.
Thank you so much. That is so important. I mean, that's wise beyond anything else. Thank you for nailing that, Lizanne. They're crucial. What is our quality of life going to be when we're in these clustered relationships that we've just got to navigate? And often here, to that point, Lizanne, I note some of the marital data. And it's like, why marital data? Because it's relevant data because it's relationship-based data. And the truth is that even in most marriages and most relationships, the issues between relationships are never fully resolved. The data shows that they remain chronic, so they reoccur over time. What we can do is manage them. We're not here to solve every relationship issue, but what we're here to do is to manage them and up-level our relationships and strengthen them. And then sometimes we feel stuck at work and we want to move to a different location. And the truth is sometimes the grass is not greener, it's just grass. Because anywhere we go, we don't have complete choice over the people that exist there. We have choice over ourselves and how we show up in the world. And so even some relationship data around that says that second marriages, we know that our current divorce rate is rather high. It's over 51% now, I think 52% or something along those lines. And second marriages have an equally or higher divorce rate than first marriages. So again, that speaks to the perpetual nature of challenge in relationships. We don't really solve all of them, we manage them. So here's where I really want to talk about horizontal violence. This is such an important topic. It was first brought up in the literature around research in the nursing field about 3 decades ago. And it really speaks to any negative and harmful behavior from one person or a group of persons towards another coworker or group of coworkers. And really, it's known as horizontal violence, lateral violence. I call it workplace abuse because it's really what it is. It's bullying. And some of the behaviors that are evident are making snide, belittling, or sarcastic comments, public humiliation, gossip, isolating a colleague from a group, ignoring or avoiding a colleague, patronizing or condescending language, undermining personal values and beliefs, tearing somebody down, mocking them, passive-aggressive behavior, harassment, and intimidation. And so we don't often explicitly talk about workplace violence or workplace abuse, but it is something that occurs in more workplaces than we would like to imagine. And it's something that creates problems with retention. It creates problems with morale, with performance, and with outcomes. And actually, the research done in the nursing field found that patient outcomes were negatively impacted by the degree of workplace violence or lateral violence found. And it's something that's about power. Like any abuse, we know in general that it's about a power over other people. And folks do think that some of the best thinking around this is that when teams, when workers are disgruntled, are dissatisfied, are unhappy, and do not have power and feel that they don't have power or agency or authority, they turn that anger inward on themselves and on their coworkers. Just like other forms of abuse, it's about trying to exert power over. And so what the research also finds that mitigates this is strengthened relationships, strengthened conflict resolution, organizational leadership that has a zero tolerance for this, and that models it, that leaders model that there is no tolerance, and that also model consequences, and that model healthy relationships. I think we have some more.
Also, Patty, we have a comment from Janet who said also along with abuse is neglect. And she's talking about how she had a supervisor who neglected her, left her out of conversations and ignored her and didn't keep her informed.
Absolutely. You just hit the nail on the head. Just isolating people, making you other, making you feel small or unseen or not having a voice. Thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely a part of it. Abuse of all forms. Some of them are small and some of them go all the way up to physical altercations and physical abuse and roughness. Now, every organization should have a policy on this, but what the data found was most of the staff didn't know about the policy, and if it existed, and it was not being enforced, and it was not being lived out. And some of these behaviors were being sort of smoothed over as, oh, well, you know, that's just how we are, or we're just stressed out, or it's not that serious, or people who encounter this sort of abuse felt afraid of speaking out about it because they didn't want to be further labeled and ostracized, and they didn't think that anything would happen about this. When we're moving from teammate to manager, we've got to be really mindful of what we model as a leader. We also have a duty and an obligation to stand up and model appropriate practices, and to set a zero tolerance for toxicity in the workplace. And this is a key point with these relationships. Our relationships will only be as strong as the trust that the team members have in the team leader and in each other. Safety and trust is crucial to strong team performance. And it's something that can be directly impacted by the leader and the manager. So now we're talking about authentic influence. What does that mean from going from a teammate to a manager? How do you have authentic influence with your team? How do you gain their trust? How do you build safety? How do you build mutual respect? I love this quote by Margaret Wheatley, wonderful writer, world-class advisor, change maker. And I think it really sets the tone for how to make change happen and how to build growth in any business. Real power and energy is generated through relationships. The patterns of relationships and the capacities to form them are more important than the tasks, functions, roles, and positions. Relationships before tasks. Relationships before results. Relationships facilitates results and performance. And that doesn't mean that we're going to be best friends with everyone, right? Absolutely not. So let's talk about this. Let's assess the pros and cons of going from a teammate to a manager. Go ahead and chime in, either in the chat box or whatever method you want. What are the pros and the cons? What are the strengths and the weaknesses of going from teammate to manager? And there's a lot of them in both sides. Please go ahead and chime in, and let's go ahead and learn from our collective wisdom here. Oh, I think we see some coming in.
Have any of you been involved in this experience, and what do you feel about that? So we have a comment from Janet. A pro is you know the gifts of the person, and the con is you know the pitfalls of the person.
Exactly. This insider information, right? Like, oh, I know more than I want to know. But that's true. And not only do we know their gifts and their challenges, as human beings, we make up a narrative about it, and we tend to reinforce what we already believe about a person.
Right. Yep. We also have Michael, morale booster. If the team sees the peer, become the manager. So.
Yeah. So that talks about possibility, right? If they see a peer elevated from within, that says, hey, there's opportunity here for me. That's a pro. Great. Wonderful.
We also have Adam saying making the change internally means you're already acquainted with the team, company policy, and the culture.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, you have historical knowledge. You understand the systems of the organization, even the political systems that are unspoken and operating in the background. You might understand how to navigate some of those as well. That's awesome. What about, yeah, please go ahead.
We have a couple more comments. Bennett said a pro for coming into the role is opportunity to make changes based on experiences as being a team member.
Absolutely. You can advocate for things, for meaningful change that moves the needle. Sure. Absolutely.
Another comment from Stephen, you already know the personalities and how to work with the team. Mm-hmm. So that is a pro.
Yeah.
Yes. And there would be a certain level of comfort, Ayana says, working and sharing ideas and issues because there's that familiarity.
Absolutely.
But the con of that was that you could get sucked into the previous way of thinking and not make positive changes.
Exactly. It's a two-sided coin, right, guys? For every pro, there's a con associated with that. When you know your team, that's great, but then you think you know your team and you know them in a certain way. What don't you know about them? How curious can you get about them, right? What about when you have some pre-existing challenges with your peers? Come on, it's real life. We don't get along with all our peers. We don't like all our peers. We don't even respect all of our peers sometimes. Sometimes we can't stand them, okay? What happens when that dynamic is in play and someone gets elevated?
Janet says she's done onboardings for staff who've shifted to a different position, and it's really helpful for them to vocalize concerns and support this person.
Mm-hmm. So people need to be honest about some of the concerns, even when you're selecting a teammate. If you're in a position, an HR, advisory, or assessing position, part of what to keep in mind is, you know, we're a whole person with our strengths and our challenges. Nobody's perfect. So let's go in with our eyes wide open and create ground conditions and planning to help that person be the best leader they can be, right? And help the team. The team needs to also respect someone who is formerly their mate, their equal, their peer, as a person in some more authority and responsibility. There could be issues with that as well on the team side.
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah. So should we move on to the next slide, Lizanne?
Anybody else have anything else to add to this before
This is rich, really
we
good.
move on?
Pros
This is
and
great.
cons.
All
Yeah.
right.
Two-sided
Excellent.
coin. Thank you. Great. So the goal is always build trust. Trust is what develops relationships. Trust is the soil for healthy high performance, and trust goes hand in hand with safety. As we move forward and look at some of the strategies for how to redesign relationships, and there's just several that I'm going to share with you, please think about any other strategies that you know and that work. There's 1,001 ways to do anything. I'm going to give you 4 key strategies to get started with. But the screen that we need to use for any strategy that you implement is, does it build trust? Does it build safety? Both ways. Does it build trust for the leader? Does it build trust for the team? And another thing to keep in mind is that just because someone has been elevated to a team leader doesn't mean that the person is not afraid. They're human too. One of the largest misconceptions I found over the years of working with senior leaders is the idea of kind of like actors and actresses, that what you see on the surface, what they have to they feel this need to portray the strength and leadership and stability and vision and unshaking, unwavering strength. That's not true. That's not true for any human being. All of us get afraid. All of us have our challenges. All of us have the gaps in our abilities. All of us question, are we good enough at one point or another in our lives and in our work? And so just because someone is in the role of a leader doesn't mean that they're just strong and okay. They need attention, and so do the teammates. And we need to build both and build them as an interconnected and interdependent system, okay? So does it build trust is one of the screens. Does it build safety? Does it knit the team together along with the leader as an interconnected, interdependent, healthy system? Healthy system, okay? Wonderful. So 4 key strategies that we're going to talk about, and I'd love for you to engage in this conversation and add on to it. All right. I love this picture because it just reminds me of like the Wild Wild West, the old Western movies where you hear like that music come on. When there's about to be like, you know, they're going to draw their pistols and have like a shootout or something. Slow down is the first strategy for a teammate moving to manager, for any leader that's entering an organization or department or unit. One of the biggest mistakes I see is they come in guns blazing, ready to make changes, ready to take it to the next level, ready to make it the next best X, Y, and Z, knowing all the answers because they're the leader, right? They're supposed to know what to do. Slow down. Holster your pistol, cowboy, cowgirl, cow person, and slow down is the first strategy. You need to slow down and assess what is going on in the environment and put on a new lens. We're not talking about what you believe only as a teammate. Now you've got to step out, be able to step in and out of your lens of a teammate. It offers you some great insights, and it can also limit you. You need to step out and observe now. Get curious about, what do I see on a larger level, on a systems level? If this is my unit or my department or my division, what's going on in the broader organization that impacts on my smaller unit within it? So nested system. What's the politics? Who are the champions for the work that we do? Who are the gatekeepers for the work that we do? What's the dynamic with my team? And what's new about my role and what's needed here to negotiate something that's healthy, that's a win-win? Okay, so that's the first strategy. Anything to, I'll take some more questions as we move on. If you have anything else, feel free to put it in the chat box. So strategy one, slow down. Don't come in with your guns blazing. Take it easy. Take your time to learn first. Second is, we often see this type of a slide where we see that something is going on. There's a lot more going on under the surface than there is above the surface. So part of that is about observing and looking at all the dynamics and all the variables that are coming into play, both the operations, the politics, the culture, the power plays that might be happening, the strengths, the opportunities there. But this is also about just go ahead and out yourself about your relationships that were pre-existing. As a team member, we all have relationships. And there is no secret. All of us know this. In organizations, there are no secrets. You think there's secrets, but there's not. Everybody knows who you were buddies with. Everybody knows who your clique was. Everybody knows who you had problems with, who you disliked. And even if everybody doesn't know, you know it, and the other person that you had interactions with knows it. And so there's a need to just speak to the elephant in the room. Acknowledge that there were previous relationships that you still hold, whether positive or they were negative, and that you will be redesigning those relationships so that they are appropriate in the workplace. And that means having one-on-one conversations with people who you've had relationships with and talking about what you both need to thrive in the current environment. So how do we want to be together? What's different now? What needs to change now that there's different roles and responsibilities? What's appropriate? And clearing the air about any sort of preferential treatment or any sort of negative slighting treatment against someone who is known to not be on your good side, or that someone that you didn't get along with. And this is where a lot of internal work needs to be done, because you've got to be really honest with yourself about how you see each person, about the narrative that you've been carrying with yourself as a team member about this other person, and being open to redesign that, being open to see with fresh eyes. And this is where coaching can come in really handy. There needs to be inner work here to renew your thinking about your team members. And you need to be able to establish a working relationship with everyone, regardless of how much you like them or don't like them personally. You've got to find a common ground. And so let's talk about a common ground that needs to be found with those people that you had positive relationships with versus the people that you had negative relationships with, and then with the collective. So it looks like we have something come into our chat.
I can add something to that, or ask something of that, Patty. You know, when you mentioned about, you know, slowing down, and it kind of made me think, in my previous role, I actually worked in, as an educator. One of the best pieces of advice I got going into administration, which is what I had studied, was you spend your first year just observing. You know, don't make any changes. Don't try to do anything. Just observe what's going on. Because when you are in the role that you're currently in, and you look at a supervisor and like, I could do their job. I could do their job easily. But when you're in that position, you realize it's a completely different perspective. You know, the responsibilities and what they're up against is not necessarily what you perceive it to be. So it just kind of reminded me of that, you know, kind of slow down, observe first, look at it from a different perspective. And it's the same with relationships.
Absolutely. This, Lizanne, that's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen leaders at every level make. No matter how gifted and wonderful they are as people, coming in with guns blazing, first of all, it's really disrespectful to the people in the organization because there's a lot of value there. You're not starting it off from scratch. People have experience, they have historical knowledge. We need to honor that. It's going to tie into our next piece. And so, yeah, the ability to take different perspectives and put on different lenses, that's actually a higher order meaning-making ability. And not all of us have been trained on how to do that. That's not something we naturally get developed in.
Right.
But taking on other people's perspectives is one of the skills that makes for great relationship makers. You know, when you think about people who are really good with others, who get others, they have the ability to try to step in and out of their own lens and know that it's just a lens I'm wearing and someone else has their lens on, and we can take them on and try to look through each other's lenses.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Have you guys had that experience? If so, drop it in the chat window. Let us know what has been your experience in that. We do have a comment here from Adam. He said he calls us the turtle approach. I like that. They're oftentimes viewed as wise and knowledgeable. Slowly over time, you stick your head out as you learn and observe the team, operation, and culture, and not coming in, like you said, guns a-blazing.
And that affords you the time to really make a thoughtful analysis. Okay. What I've learned from many very senior executives like the CEO and all of those at the very top of very large organizations, they want very well thought out plans from their VPs or their SVPs. They want you to have taken the time to observe, to analyze, to get input, and not come up from the rank and say, all right, I know exactly what to do. No, you've got great potential, you've got great skills, you've got great perspective, and now you need more perspective. And there's no success individually. At this level, leaders have to scale success. When you're an individual contributor and your work speaks for you and you're in complete control of it, that's one thing. Scaling success as a group for your team is another. And so when we're redesigning our relationships, part of it is one-on-one discussions with people who we had previous relationships with as a teammate to really talk about what's different, what's new, and what our intentions are, and the desire to want to work together and make it a positive and healthy relationship. Whether you had a negative experience with that person or positive, you've got to speak to the elephant in the room because everybody is carrying it with them anyway. And then as a group, it's important for you to speak to your team as a group and make it a conversation, not you're talking to them or at them, but having a conversation about what would make us a successful team. What do we need to feel safe? What do we need to feel heard? What do we need to thrive? What do we need to be at our best? How do we want to deal with each other when we have conflict? Because there will always be conflict. We're human. Yeah, just checking in. Thank you. So the next piece is about, again, that analysis. Come with your head and your heart. It's important that we see our team members as human beings with a wealth of knowledge, with honoring the current. Okay, the fact is that the change of having a new leader is a change in of itself. And that in and of itself is a stressor on the system. Change is constant, change is normal, and change still creates some stress and some stretching on that system. And you've got to be mindful of that as a manager, as a team member moves up, that is in and of itself a change that has shifted dynamics that causes people to need to regroup. And anytime there's change, we cross an edge with that change. Some people cross more easily, more frequently, more fluidly, I would say more easily than others. And others you have to help along with that change. And so what's really important is that when you come into an organization, you must first use your head and your heart together to honor what exists there. Honor the primary. If you ram change into any team or any organization, it will not be successful. We know that 70 to 80% of all change initiatives fail or have no visible signs of change. You can change on paper all you want. If your people are not willing to cross that edge and change with you, there is no change. There will continue to be catastrophe or chaos or the same results or declining morale or resistance. So you've got to come together. One of the key strategies for change is communication. People need to feel like they have a voice. And when they do voice their opinions, they need to feel that you're actually going to do something with that. Not that you can make all their requests come true, but that you're listening for a real reason. It's not perfunctory. That's what's important. You need to honor what is current. You need to honor the way things were done that worked. They got them to where they are now. Everything is about scaling. What got you here may not get you there tomorrow, but it doesn't mean it wasn't good. It doesn't mean it wasn't right. So there's a place where you really need to honor what exists. You need to honor those people that have historical knowledge, that have experience and expertise, that if you come up with an initiative or someone on the team comes up with it and it's been tried, you can mine the lessons learned. You can utilize the existing collective wisdom that's in the group. So all those things are really important to manage from a head and a heart perspective in the way a team member operates as a leader, and doing that in a collective fashion. Gone are the days of that top-down, bureaucratic, autocratic, type of leadership. That's over. It's gone and bygone. And so now it's about compassionate leadership, authentic leadership, ethical leadership, conscious leadership, collaborative leadership. Anything on that, folks, that you would like to contribute? What else is important when you're moving up in regard to this, using your heart, using your mind, being curious, and honoring and acknowledging what works now? It's a strengths-based approach.
Maybe if we get to the fourth one, maybe some more people will chime in. Oh, we do see something here from Janet. And Janet says there will always be change resistors. 100% agreed.
Yeah.
Maybe over communicate, lots of one-on-one chats about the changes you're as you are able, but also say this is happening and I know you're not comfortable with it, and how can we help you with this?
Absolutely. Again, great. Building safety, building trust, giving every voice of the system an opportunity to be expressed. It doesn't mean that every single person is going to say something about everything, but every voice of the system, every theme, every concern, every insight gets elevated and gets opened up to be addressed. And then what's important is to really do something with the information that people give you. When people give you information and they feel that's perfunctory, it's just a check off the list, it erodes the trust, it erodes the safety, and it erodes their continued collaboration and engagement. And even when you're communicating with your staff, you can communicate that you don't know how it's going to all play out. You don't have all the answers, but you will share information as you have it. You will share and you will advocate for what's best for the group. Really important. Thank you. Great. So our next piece about really two things: building an intentional culture and scaling success. And here's when I would speak again on the workplace abuse, toxic environment. It's really important that an intentional culture is crafted. Every team, every organization has a default culture. If you're not intentionally designing the culture of the team and the organization, you will end up with a default culture of whatever comes to be through whatever chemistry and alchemy happens in the background. This must be an intentional process. Who do we say we are? How do we live that out? How do we walk that out? What are the values of the organization? Are we living them out? What are the values of our team? And this is, again, a collaborative process. So build an intentional culture around what you want, what is acceptable, what is applauded, what is supportive, what is valuable, and be very clear about what that looks like. And also be very clear about the things that do not fit into this team and into this dynamic. And these need to be co-constructed. And there needs to be safety and trust created so that every person knows that there isn't retribution for speaking them, that you in fact will take seriously the policies and practice against workplace abuse or harassment or any other policy. You know, one of the key things I see in organizations that's a challenge is they have paper, you know, just flying out of their ears. They have a policy for this and a policy for that and this and that. And the fact is that they're not living policies, or they're not even living values. They're on paper somewhere collecting dust. They're written, they're checked off, but nobody even knows when it was created back in 1922 or even yesterday. No one knows about it. It's not being implemented. It's not being honored. It's not enforced. So it's one thing to have policy and practice on paper, and it's another to live it out and implement it. And that goes to team leader integrity. You've got to walk the talk, okay? So building an intentional team culture and walking the talk is really important. I'm going to.
And also we have another comment here. I know we're going to be wrapping up in just a minute or so. Michael recommends a book he threw in the chat window that speaks to many of the points you're making about the culture and outlining that.
Yeah,
so he did
awesome.
Include that link in the chat window if anyone's interested.
Awesome. Fostering Culture, a Leader's Guide. Awesome. Thank you so much. Great.
Yeah,
wonderful work out there. And then finally, just scaling success. We talked about this. Individual contributors, your work, you're responsible for it. It speaks for itself in many ways. As a team leader, you have to coalesce your team around the common goals and the relationships so that you can accomplish those goals and work together. So you've got to take it from an individual success, contributor success model to a collective success model. And the other part of that is that acknowledgement and recognition, you're going to have to step back. Team leaders need to learn to step back and push your team forward so that light shines on their team as well. And that every member of the team gets equal opportunity to shine as well. That's another pitfall I see with leaders, that if you have a few departments under you or a few divisions or work groups, some feel more like the stepchild of the other. So as a team leader, there's a need to scale success, scale performance to a collective, and to step back and push your team forward, that they be recognized and acknowledged and rewarded for the collective work. So part of that is ego work as well, and acknowledging and recognizing your team, and then doing that with the people who are in even higher leadership and seniority roles. Really showcasing your team is the critical component of that. So with that, we've come to the end of the slide. Again, I just love that piece. And today I'd like you to just, I love that quote again, so I have it here again. Just write down, now let's make it real. Write down something that you're taking away, something that was meaningful to you from this webinar, from this discussion, and then write down what you're gonna do about it and move forward with that. What could get in your way? Then finally, I would love for you to keep in touch with me. So many of you are consultants, many of you are trainers, I have a lot of great content on my website, so you can keep up with me there and join our listserv, our communication list. We never spam you. And then finally, if you're interested in building your business, doing consulting or training for organizations, I do mentor consultants and trainers in doing their great work in this world and doing it through organizational clients. So if you're interested in that, I'm happy to offer you a complimentary strategy session. All you need to do is email me here. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. I'm dropping right now in the chat window that email address as well as the website that is on that last slide. So if you want to grab that, you can. We have about 2 minutes remaining. What I'm going to do right now is also drop in the chat window a short survey about today's session. If you could please just take that short survey and let us know what you thought about the topic today. And also while you're doing that, if you have any questions for Patty, you can come off your mic and ask, or just drop it in the chat window at this time. Janet also mentions in the chat window to have sensitivity and look at the collective team.
Absolutely.
Great advice.
Collective wins. Thank you, Janet. Absolutely. So as you all kind of look at this, say, oh, Adam, take your time when in the role. Absolutely.
Yep.
Put them back in the holster. Use your head and your heart. Honor.
That's a great takeaway.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you all for the great work that you do in organizations, whether you're a direct leader or you're a consultant or a trainer. This is the time that we need it more than ever. And thank you for leaning into something is about your head and your heart and supporting leaders in doing that. And it's been my honor and pleasure. I thank you so much. Please keep in touch with me, you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Patty. It was such an honor to have you here today. And thank you guys again for joining us and checking out this webinar. We'll see you next time. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.